Many of them indeed know better, but as you will discover, people find it very difficult to act on what they know. To act is to be committed, and to be committed is to be in danger. In this case, the danger in the minds and hearts of most white Americans is the loss of their identity. Try to imagine how you would feel if you woke up one morning to find the sun shivering and all the stars aflame. You would be frightened because it is out of the order of nature. Any upheaval in the universe is terrifying because it so profoundly attacks one's sense of one's own reality. Well, the black man has functioned in the white man's world as a fixed star, as an immovable pillar, and as he moves out of his place, heaven and earth are shaken to their foundations.
I was beginning the process of making connections between some of the pieces we've seen thus far, leading up to this major work, which has so many levels to engage with it. And I was thinking of the fact that the seminar began with the image of a watchtower inside of a prison, with an exhortation by an elder to know one's history, and that not just because it's worth knowing, but that this is going to be something that's desperately useful to us if we're going to move forward in the ways that we all hope to. And thinking about Sarah Maldor's film this morning, and how much of it also gives space for the lives of those in prison, and the attempts of prisons to crush the spirit, to crush movements. And then thinking about the whole sense throughout Route 181 that the physical landscape having become a prison, where we're watching this wall being erected, we're looking at barbed wire. But not only this physical prison, but this kind of intellectual prison that's been created. And that it readily brought to mind a quote that I often keep close to my spirit from my good friend Noam Chomsky, that historical amnesia is a dangerous phenomena, not only because it undermines historical and intellectual activity, but because it lays the groundwork for crimes yet to come. And the ways in which people in the film evade responsibility for history, from the children who say, "This happened before I was born, so why is it of interest to me?" Or the many people who are saying, "Oh, it's in the past, it's gone," which reminded me of another quote that someone once said, "Even if you're done with history, it doesn't mean that history is done with you." I feel very nervous to speak right now, but I feel it's really important to say something, which is that I found myself feeling really alienated by your exercise, and like it was not, I felt it was for you and for people like you. And so I felt like there was an assumption made about who would be here, and that they were all people like you. And then suddenly a conversation that had been inclusive of everyone here was not for everybody here. And I resented kind of the level of sentimentality that you brought to these texts. Like there was something to have a campfire around. And I was really enraged in the private conversation. And so I feel like that's something you should know. And I understand that you did this in small groups of 10 and groups of white people to make them feel empathy. But there's no need for that exercise here if that's your community and your feeling. And so that's all I have to say.
I wouldn't characterize the relation between this morning and this afternoon as a politics of disembodiment and a politics of re-embodiment. I think the idea that we can characterize it that way, as if we somehow have to get back to the body, I think that's kind of a slight misreading about what was at stake this morning and what's at stake now. To me, it's much more about struggling with the notion of the screen that tries to trap us and tries to reduce what cinema and what screens are capable of, and tries to replace the capacity to take us out of ourselves and connect with things wider than us. and tries to trap us in ourselves and tries to reflect us back to ourselves and constructs the screen as a narcissistic, neurotic mirror. And it's the struggle with that I think was at stake this morning. And I think that struggle is still there now. So when I hear about the politics of re-embodiment, I feel trapped within a personalization and within a body that I'm trying to connect to a greater outside, something that is bigger than a body, something that's more important than bodies.
The struggle is that it's not possible to say something that you will well, first of all, Madeline, I'd love to talk to you, because I see you over there, and I'd like to talk to you more, because we have mostly, maybe we should just address the issue of race, not race, and otherness, because I do struggle to find words for that, and it's not just about classifications of entities, but the question of this really profound way that I believe that human beings are quite splintered. And maybe I have really big questions about what is really a community right now. So I think this is one reason why I was drawn to these particular texts, because they're kind of expressing this factor of imagination, or calling out to the possibility of an even broader community. And I'm surprised that nobody talked about Occupy at all, actually, and about the relationship of one community to another across time and space, and in a period of increasingly fast global economic imperialism, and how there are these connections, and how we are, and I shouldn't have to, but have to like to what kind of stimuli in the future to communicate across these really real boundaries, these really real differences that are not the norm, they're not the typical differences, they're not the differences, the catechism of differences that necessarily come out of, different kinds of ethnic studies movements. I think they're much more challenging and complex than that, and I think that's really kind of the challenge. And so one thing, and I think, maybe this doesn't do anything, and it doesn't even approach that, but that was for us, it was one of those questions was like, does reciting the same thing, like, this doesn't fit anybody, hardly, really, this doesn't fit anyone, and so reciting it, and then we can compare, like, it offers, like, obviously this feels like shit for me, like, you just hurt my feelings, or this feels really great, this feels really empowering, and then use that to discuss, well, wow, why do we resonate in such different ways, and what can we do with that? And that would take a lot more time. So this is really an irritant, and I understand that.
The first question: how do we embody the movement of historical material? What's historical? What's material? What's what? What's a body? Does the movement have to start from a position? Doesn't every movement start with a position? Do historical materials have positions that are fixed? Fixed from what point of view? Why would you want to embody historical material? What's a body? Why do we avoid saying historical materialism? Could we have 30 seconds? What if we confuse the movement of history with the movement of the camera? Is history made up of material, or is it made up of actions? At what point is history history? I'm sorry, can I just interject and just say that this exercise is really frustrating because we're just throwing questions in the air? It almost seems like we're repeating the same questions again and again, and I think that invalidates a more sincere questioning, or answers for that matter. What is your question?